I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and request that we have police response. Our physical safety is being threatened by the actions of the demonstrators outside banging on the windows, which could easily get broken, and we will have a mob scene. I'm asking for police presence to arrest those individuals.
That's Councilmember Kathy Moore speaking out at this week's City Council meeting for Seattle about a protest that shut down the meeting for more than an hour. How did the council respond to this protest? And what does that mean for the future of protests at City Hall, which has seen plenty of action like this over the years? We're talking about all this and more this week on a special bonus council meeting protest edition of Seattle News, Views, and Brews, your coffee break political podcast. I'm Brian Callanan. I'm a host on Seattle Channel. The views expressed here are mine, and I am with my friend and co-host David Croman once again, City Hall reporter for the Seattle Times. David, I was just talking to you about this. It's one of those weeks where you think it's going to be a quiet council meeting, and then something like this happens. So I appreciate you jumping in for this special edition podcast here. How you holding up after all that excitement this week?
Oh, I'm fine. I was watching it on the Seattle Channel live stream, so
yeah,
I was kind of removed from the whole thing.
Yeah, what a surreal experience there for sure. Well, thank you, David, for joining me here as we break this down. Thank you to our patrons, and a big thanks to Converge Media. The video version of this podcast is on Converge. You can watch the regular show Wednesday nights at 7. We'll figure out a way to air this show as well. Okay, off we go. It is time for Right Here, Right Now. All right, David, let's break down what happened this week at Seattle City Council. The Stop the Sweeps group came to this meeting. They were asking for help for asylum seekers. They spoke during public comment. It got a little heated. Council President Nelson called what they were doing craven political opportunism and cut the public comment short. And that's when things got interesting. I just wanted your take on this. In looking at this meeting, when Council President Nelson went into take charge mode and cut the public comment short, what effect did that have, and what happened at that point?
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing is, I mean, sometimes people want to come and they say their piece, and sometimes that piece is loud and uncomfortable to the people who are on the receiving end of it. But in my experience, a lot of times if you let people do that, then they kind of move on. But in this case, Council President Nelson is trying to set a different kind of environment in city council than past ones. And, she's been pretty upfront about viewing some of the kind of more activist wings of Seattle politics as basically she doesn't see them as good faith actors, and said that as much in the beginning of the city council meeting. And as such said that she was going to stick pretty closely, pretty strictly to the 20-minute public comment rule, which is there in theory, but is almost never adhered to specifically. Right. I don't remember a council meeting where if there were more than 20 minutes worth of public comment, the city council didn't extend that public comment beyond 20 minutes.
Right.
So it was rare and kind of stood out. She had said, I don't think that the people here are in good faith. And so therefore I'm keeping this to the strict 20 minutes. And that really set people off. And that's kind of how we spiraled into the fairly tense standoff between the people who were there to advocate, mostly for asylum seekers in Tukwila, but a few other things as well, and the city council who, a few of them ended up calling for arrests.
Yeah, that's right. I know Kathy Moore did at one point. And I did want to talk about this because you followed up on this point. 6 people were arrested here. What can you tell us about what happens next with them?
Yeah, so there were 6 arrests, 3 men, 3 women, all of them with criminal trespass, and one of them with obstruction. I don't remember obstruction of what exactly. The jail records show that they were booked and then released a few hours later. It sounds like the bail was about $1,000. And so now but they haven't been. Their cases haven't been filed yet. So that's a decision that it sounds like, because this is going to be misdemeanor. These would be misdemeanor charges. That decision's with the city attorney's office,
right?
County prosecuting attorney's office. They haven't made a decision on whether or not they're going to file those yet. Generally, this new city attorney's office says that they like to make decisions on these things within 5 daes, 5 business days. I don't know if they're actually doing that with most cases. In this case, I would expect that to actually happen, just because there's a lot of people who care and are paying attention to this.
Yeah.
So they haven't made a decision yet. The spokesperson had told me that, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Initially, I took that to mean that they were planning to do it by the end of the week. He later called and clarified that the decision could come next week also.
I see. Okay.
But within days, not weeks, we should expect a decision from the city attorney's office about what they're going to do here.
Got it. And I just wanted to talk about what this means for the future of different people who speak out at council meetings. I think you pointed this out in the article you had earlier this week about it, that protest and people using loud voices, just to coin your phrase there, that's happened for decades at Seattle City Hall. And I just looked at this, and I remember hearing from Councilmember Saka towards the end of this. He said, we need to move away from this divisive rhetoric. That played with the last council, not today. It doesn't work with this council. And I'm just thinking about this. Okay, maybe the council's thinking, it's all settled here. We made these arrests and we're moving on. But I have to think that there's some protest groups out there thinking, oh, really? It's on. You know what I mean? And I'm just trying to figure out what this means for the future of protests at City Hall, if indeed they do happen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really good question. I'm a relatively new parent. I think anyone who's worked with children, sometimes when you get into a back and forth, then that tends to make things a little worse. And so that is my question here too, is has this then made this into an issue rather than it being about what these people were protesting about? Now it is about the very act of protest in City Hall. I don't know where it goes from here, but I think this level of activism, I mean, there's always been a bit of this in City Hall. I think it really took off when Shama Sawant was elected because she was really effective at getting organizers to come out. And, members of the city council who are not named Shama Sawant have kind of felt really uncomfortable with some of this for years now and have complained about it and not liked it, but to an extent have kind of accepted it for what it is, kind of the price of being an elected official. You can get yelled at sometimes in public. Councilmember Saka says that's not going to fly anymore. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's up to him. I
was going to say, it's like you can't choose how people are going to protest or when they're going to protest or what they're going to say, right?
Yeah, right. And again, generally my experience is when things blow up like this, it's some amount of discomfort, maybe even up to an hour of kind of standoff and yelling and shouting. And then eventually people kind of move on and they get on with their business, whatever it might be. This is the first time that this has ever escalated, at least since I've been covering City Hall, to people actually being arrested and council members calling for those arrests.
Yeah.
They say that they were fearing for their safety. And I can't say one way or the other if there was a real threat there. I think they probably had images of January 6th, to be honest, in their heads.
Right.
I mean,
people banging on the windows out there. It was getting really loud for sure.
It was super loud. Yeah. And, and so, I'm not saying that wasn't a genuine feeling. I'm just saying that if this is the first real confrontation, I would just be surprised if anyone was happy with how this turned out, even the members of the council. And it's something they're going to have to figure out because, the thing about being in the majority is you're going to catch a lot more criticism and scrutiny from the people who are in the minority. And right now, that is the people where they're protesting, their former allies on the city council are no longer there. And so they're going to feel like the way that they want to get their message across, it can't really go through the same legislative channels that maybe they used to. So they have protests. So I don't think they're going to go away. Yeah, that's we're going to have to come up with a game plan here because we can't have arrests after every city council meeting.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. It's determined by how you handle these different things and how you handle these different opinions. And I just go back to the November election, and yes, there was a more conservative, more moderate majority that was voted into the city council there. But those races weren't, blow away type things where someone's getting 70% of the vote or something along those lines. I think there's a number of different people out there who might have a more left-leaning bent or whatever you want to say, and they're going to speak out at these meetings. I feel like that segment of the population is still there and still very willing to speak on these things. Do you get that feeling too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of votes, not thousands of votes separating these, and it's not like that advocacy community has just gone away. And in fact, like I was just saying, they probably feel like to get their message across, they have to be louder at city council meetings. I guess I was surprised to hear how clear Council President Nelson was about her rationale for limiting public comment to 20 minutes. I mean, she basically said, I don't believe that you all are here in good faith. I think you're taking advantage of vulnerable people for your own political gains.
Right.
I'm not going to say whether that's true or not. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole separate debate. But at the end of the day, she is saying, I'm not going to allow as much public comment because I don't believe that your political convictions are genuine.
Yeah.
That's a precarious place to be, because now you're making judgment calls about
Yep.
public comment. We've had Alex Zimmerman up there calling them Nazis for 20 years. I mean,
Right.
he still has the right to go up and do that to a limit.
Yes.
And that's always been sort of the beauty of public comment, is you have some really well-spoken, well-thought-out public commenters, and you have some not so well-spoken, but they all have access to the people who are sitting before them in power, who have been elected. They can tell them what they think. When you start getting into a situation where you are granting that right based on your beliefs or political leanings, it's something to watch out for. That's a precarious position for the city council to be in.
Agreed. And I guess I just wanted to come back to this. The sad fact of all this is this issue of asylum seekers, I believe, was overshadowed by this protest. And I hate to say that, because this was also interesting when Council President Nelson said this is a Tukwila issue, this is a county issue. The city of Seattle has actually been helping some of these asylum seekers out. I know Councilmember Kathy Moore helped get some funding to these asylum seekers back last month so they could stay at a hotel in Kent for an extended period of time. Of course, that period wrapped up on February 26th, which may have something to do with what we heard about here. But some thoughts about that. I mean, this larger issue of asylum seekers, and the city of Seattle, I think, like a lot of other jurisdictions, saying, how can we stay out of this? Because it's such a larger issue, a federal issue, a state issue. I mean, it's way beyond the structure, I guess, of the city of Seattle.
Yeah, and that's sticky, and not to blow it up too much, but I would say that we've heard from this city hall already an inclination toward retracting away from their involvement with county politics. Both Council President Nelson and Mayor Harrell have told me that they have real questions about their involvement with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority.
For example, right.
Their involvement with King County or Public Health Seattle King County. And now here we have Council President Nelson saying, basically, this is a county issue. This is not a Seattle issue. That is an interesting turn, and it's a not so subtle shift, I would say, where Seattle is saying, look, we're more interested in getting our issues that we have here, which are substantial, in order, and less interested with overextending ourselves beyond the borders of Seattle. The counter argument to that is Seattle is much of King County. I mean, when you're talking about King County, you can't talk about King County without also talking about Seattle.
Right.
And what happens in Seattle does not stay in Seattle.
Yeah.
And so therefore, a lot of people would argue that Seattle does in fact have an obligation to extend its arms out to cities like Tukwila when they're hurting in a situation like this. So it was interesting to hear Council President Nelson say that. I think that doesn't line up with how past councils would have thought about this, but it's certainly a shift. And she's and the rest of the council have this budget deficit to deal with. So anything that will require even another couple $1 million is going to be, they're going to be a little more hesitant to.
They're going to be scrutinizing it for sure. Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. So, I don't know where to go next on this, David, but I get the feeling a lot of people are going to be keeping a close eye on that next council meeting. What do you think in terms of protesters showing up, et cetera?
Yeah, totally. I think I will be watching, even like we said, I didn't go to this in person because the agenda itself wasn't all that interesting.
Right.
Now I'm going to be paying attention to these council meetings, even when the agenda doesn't look that interesting. And,
right.
I guess the fear for the city, for this council, which has come in with fairly ambitious promises and a fairly clear identity of what it is they want to do, is that that identity is redefined as into one where they're just kind of dealing with this every week. And it's more about their relationship with certain aspects of the public than it is about what they're trying to accomplish. That's always true to an extent with somebody's elected office. They think they're going to do one thing, and then something else comes up and they got to deal with that.
Yeah.
Jenny Durkin in the COVID pandemic, I'm sure we'll have something to say about that.
Sure.
But that's the real fear, is that this becomes a lot of their focus, is these fights when they have a lot of other stuff to deal with.
They certainly do. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. And I did want to talk about a few other things that the Seattle City Council is talking about, and the mayor's office as well. A new transportation plan from Mayor Harrell. What does it say about where resources need to go and how big our next Move Seattle levy for transportation is going to be this fall? We're going to talk about it next with some details on Now Hear This. Well, Mayor Harrell put out his new transportation plan at the end of February. I'm working my way through it, and what does jump out to me is the tiered approach the mayor is taking. Tier 1 priority projects, Tier 2, etc. And much of that is focused on safety, which he highlighted in his recent State of the City speech.
Making sure our kids get to school safely and to their activities safely. Seniors could get to their care and their services. People of all ages can go shopping and transit and other amenities safely. Pedestrians, cyclists, and transit riders are all examples of those who demand and deserve safety, and that will be a pillar of our approach.
David, I'm not sure where you are in terms of reading this plan. I'm guessing about page 657 out of the 750 plus here, plus appendices. Look out. But I did want to talk about some major takeaways here. One is a number of the capital improvement projects listed here, 81 have been laid out here, were also on the list for the Move Seattle levy in 2015. Many thanks to the urbanist for pointing that out. And it really shows me that, yeah, sure, you can plan it, but building it became nearly impossible during the pandemic, and it's just going to be really hard to catch up. Some thoughts about this plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of plan that cities do, and perhaps it's helpful internally when thinking about planning. As a former transportation reporter, I'll be honest, it's not that interesting to me because the challenge with transportation isn't saying what you want to build; it's actually funding and building it. I think it will be legitimate news and something that we will cover when the Move Seattle proposal comes out in a week or two. And because, then we're talking about real dollars and cents, what voters are going to be deciding on their plans for implementing it. Just talk to anybody who's paid any attention to Sound Transit for a while. At a certain point, you kind of have to look, you have to cut how many years forward you're looking because, you can come up with all the plans in the world, but like the last few years have shown us, even when funding is there, it's not guaranteed that you get everything you want, let alone when you're just sort of talking speculatively around the sort of vision you want to create for transportation. It just doesn't mean a whole lot unless there are dollars and timelines.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and I am anxiously awaiting a sidebar here. In April, the 27th, they're actually going to open up the Link Light Rail in between Redmond and Bellevue. Just heard about that, and I'm excited to see that, but it's one of those kind of things where it's like, man, we've been waiting for this forever. When's it going to happen? It looks like it is actually going to happen in the month of April. But I did want to...
Even that is just this segment that is getting cut off. They screwed up the tracks over the I-90 bridge. So
yeah, and that one's supposed to come next year, but yeah, you believe it when you see it, for sure. I did want to go down that path, though, when it comes to the Move Seattle levy and what this transportation plan may indicate about this. Again, yes, it is a large plan. It's 750 pages, very aspirational in terms of its language there. But I'm trying to look at that levy and see where it might end up landing. The urbanist talked about this as well. Peg the amount maybe at $1.2 billion, which would make it the largest levy again in city history. That's basically just keeping up with inflation. I know some advocates are saying we're falling behind. We need this closer to $3 billion or something along those lines. When you start putting that B in front of it, this would be the first billion-dollar type of levy that the city of Seattle would put out there. I think that can be scary to some people, but I'm just trying to get some feel for this. It's $970 billion right now, that Move Seattle levy. Where is it going to go? Do you have an idea about that number, David?
Yeah, I don't. I've heard, like you said, between 1.2 and up to close to 2 billion, maybe 1.8, something like that. To an extent, there is a cap on how far you can go. Even that doesn't even have to do with what voters will approve, which is just implementation.
Yeah,
I know the last few years there have been a lot of things, the pandemic and concrete strikes and weather or whatever. Regardless, though, like even that $970 million, SDOT has almost every single quarter underspent its budget for that quarter and has then continued to roll over more money every year. So it's not as easy as just putting. I mean, it's a difficult thing to get. I don't know what the math is on 1.8 billion divided by 9 is, but it's a difficult thing to get that much money out every year with staffing constraints and supply chain constraints. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. And so I would be surprised if they went above $2 billion, politics aside for that reason alone. I just don't know that they would be all that confident that they could actually get that much money out the door.
Right. That's been a challenge, and I know we've talked about that piece before. And I did want to, I got to bring up another plan, David. Sorry, but I didn't want to talk about another plan with you. Comprehensive plan, also
This one
overdue.
matters. This one has
Yeah.
some more heft to it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that, though, like bringing in this comprehensive plan that's supposed to come out sometime in March here, working it together with this transportation plan, building a transportation system that hopefully encourages the growth and helps out the growth that the city is planning for here. Can you talk about those two plans and how they work together and some thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that people will be paying most attention to with the comprehensive plan is the housing piece, which is how much density are you going to allow? And, I mean, there's a lot of talk about transit-oriented density and things like that. And so the two should work together in that they're sort of hard to break apart, because when you're talking about density or housing, you're also talking about where that the location of that housing, and therefore it's how easily accessible transit is from that housing to downtown. I mean, you're kind of building this network. And so, those two things theoretically should work closely together. My sense is, back to the levy, my sense is, hearing from Councilmember Saka, who's the transportation chair, and Mayor Harrell in his State of the City, is that levy is not going to do a lot of new stuff. It sounds like that levy is going to focus more on bridge maintenance, paving, sidewalks to an extent, could be a new thing. Neither of them seem all that interested in unveiling some new, for example, I don't expect the First Avenue streetcar to get funding in this next summer.
It's on the list. Number 32 is the Center City connector there. But definitely more aspirational than not.
And so then when you're talking about growth, I mean, I just wouldn't expect this levy to fundamentally change the way that our transportation system functions. It's just, I expect it will focus more on effectiveness of the one that we have already.
Yeah, talking about effectiveness, talking about safety. There's a little bit more of a nod towards economic development, I would say, in this plan. So we'll see how that plays out in terms of the need for freight to be moving through. So a lot to consider here. And thank you for engaging on the plan with me here, David. And we're going to start wrapping up here with our next topic here. We're talking about what's going on with ShotSpotter, that gunshot detection technology. The final word has come in from the public about this. About ShotSpotter, other police surveillance tactics by the Harrell administration. We'll review what people are debating about at a community center near you. That's coming up on What's Next. Heads up, listeners, a slight delay on this, but we will be answering questions in our segment You Ask, We Answer next week. Thank you for what you've been sending in. Keep them coming, please. Any question you might have about local government, we still need your emails. Send them to Seattle News, Views, and Brews. Spell it out at gmail.com, and thank you for your input. David, let's talk about surveillance technology real quick. The end of February marks the end of public comment on the mayor's proposal to include this gunshot detection technology and license plate reading technology in the budget. It was a pretty raucous council meeting, as we mentioned this week, and some protesters were calling for this $1.5 million to be diverted to asylum seekers. But then you had places like Bitter Lake, where there was a public hearing, Capitol Hill, where there was a public meeting, where they raised some other concerns too. And people were saying some of the same things. Some are saying, let's make this happen. We had a record number of homicides last year. We need some new tech, maybe. We don't have enough officers. Let's bring it on. Others say this tech really hasn't worked in other cities. Chicago just dumped its $9 million system recently. A lot of false reports are generated from this. We don't need more government surveillance. And I know we've touched on this story before, David, but I wanted to revisit it because at the end of this public comment period, it's pretty clear to me this project is going to be rolled out in some way, shape, or form, despite some pushback here. What are you going to be keeping an eye on as this progresses, I should say, just to see how effective it might be?
Yeah, I mean, does it lead to any sort of change, I suppose? Does it lead to arrests? I mean, I guess that would be
one metric.
That's one metric. Chief Diaz has sort of downplayed that as being the only metric. I don't know if there's a sort of deterrence aspect here, but I think there will be evaluations done of how this technology works. So, what that says. I think there's a lot of, there is kind of two levels of concern here, which is the kind of more broad, like, is this going to lead to over-policing? Are we creating kind of a surveillance state? Concerns of the ACLU. And then there's the more kind of neighborhood concerns, which is, I'm concerned about shots being fired, and I want you to use any piece of technology you have to do something about that. And so in some ways, the supporters and the people who are skeptical of it are kind of debating different things, which is just kind of an interesting angle, probably worth exploring more.
Yeah, and I guess it looks like they're going to be testing out one neighborhood at a time. The possible pilot areas, they're talking about Aurora Avenue North, Belltown, Chinatown ID, Downtown Commercial Core. It feels like they're going to start rolling this out one neighborhood at a time. And I guess I hear what you're saying there, David. It'll be a matter of trying to see what the actual impact in that neighborhood is. Are there going to be fewer shots fired? That kind of a thing. That's what we're going to keep an eye on, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've seen, as you mentioned, other cities kind of pull back from this.
Yeah.
Because they didn't feel like it was worth the cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the ShotSpotter transports police there instantaneously.
Right. And you need an officer to actually take in the ShotSpotter information and dispatch people and all that kind of thing. It's not a magic wand for sure.
No, and we hear over and over again that police are basically only responding to active crimes right now. They're not really doing cleanup duty on a lot of other stuff just because they say they don't have enough people. So
right.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose it could act as a deterrence, just the idea of them. But as far as, I mean, it's all going to come down to what police can or will actually do with that information. Yeah.
A tool is only as useful as the people who are using it. So that's a very good point point made there. All right, we do need to wrap up here, David. I just wanted to make sure I touched on this. I saw you post that you are headed to your first Kraken game this weekend.
Yeah.
What have you learned about the wonderful sport of hockey in preparation for the big event? What do you got, man?
I haven't learned a lot yet. The only time I've watched the Kraken was when they were in the playoffs last year, and that was pretty much it. So I don't know very much about hockey. I just know it's large men going extremely fast back and forth and running into each other sometimes. So
a lot of that there's a puck involved, apparently. Yeah, that's there's a lot of cheering involved too. I will say this: I've been to some live games. I've watched them on TV too. TV is great, but seeing it live is a completely different experience. Just the quickness and the dexterity with the way these guys play, it's off the charts. So I know you're going to have a great time. And a quick word to the wise: if 8 goals are actually scored, do not throw an octopus on the ice. It's been a deal for, like, the Detroit Red Wings did that for a long time. Like, hey, 8 legs, we scored 8 goals. But that's been banned. So don't even think about bringing any sort of octopus, squid, or anything like that to the game. Just kind of a warning there, David. If you
got it, I will freeze the octopus that I bought.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Octopus free since 2023. I love it. David, thanks a million for joining me as always on this double secret special edition of Seattle News, Views, and Brews as we talk about what's been going on at the Seattle City Council. And remember, this is the podcast where you can always find out what's brewing in local politics. Thanks especially to our patrons who support the show. Please get in touch and send us some questions at Seattle News, Views, and Brews @gmail.com. This podcast is on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. Please find Seattle News, Views, and Brews on Patreon and show your support there. Thanks for watching on Converge Media, too. We will see you next time.
Seattle News, Views, and Brews is an independent production of Callanan Media Services. Copyright 2024.